Hi, everyone. My name is Marie Scholer, and I work at EIOPA. So let me first start with a couple of words about what is EIOPA. So EIOPA is an authority for insurance and pension supervision. We ensure consumer protection, financial transparency, and consistent regulation in Europe. And we are an advisory body for the European Commission, the European Parliament, to shape laws in Europe and at national level. So I will now share my screen with you. Perfect. Because today I would like to talk about the insurance protection gap in Europe and also about the key role that the insurance sector has to play to actually also help to reduce the risks to be able to reduce then the insurance protection gap. So let's first start with the overall picture and what is the current insurance protection gap in Europe. So at EIOPA, we had a look at historical loss data, and we saw that only around a quarter of the losses were actually insured in the past for natural catastrophes in Europe. So this is not much. And of course, if we think about future trends or already current trends related to climate change, increasing frequency or intensity of events, at EIOPA, we worry, of course, that because insurance, what we pay is actually based on the risk that is covered. So if the risk is increasing, also what we will ultimately pay as a consumer will also increase. And at some point, maybe this coverage will become unaffordable for us, or also the insurers, they will say, well, we don't want to cover these risks anymore because this is too risky. So this is why at EIOPA we have started to work on addressing the insurance protection gap. And we organize our work around 4 pillars. The first one is, of course, the insurance protection gap in Europe is a complex topic. So what we started with is really the first pillar to understand and to be able to measure and monitor the insurance protection gap in Europe. So I will come back to that in my next slide. Second pillar, which is really, I would say, at the core of any solution to actually be able to address the insurance protection gap in Europe, is the fact that we need to mitigate the risk. We need to adapt to climate change because at some point, if these risks are increasing, there will simply not be any affordable insurance coverage anymore. And this is going to be really an issue for the society. So that's why second pillar is really to really think about how to mitigate the risks. The third pillar, of course, we are in the context of the insurance protection gap, is also to think, okay, what are adequate insurance products to be able to cover natural catastrophes, for example, and also to better understand maybe also from the demand perspective. In Europe, there are in some countries where very little people take insurance coverages against natural catastrophes, but this, when they occur, can have dramatic consequences for a family. So also to understand why do people maybe tend to not take insurance coverage. And the last pillar that we are also working on is in this context that we have risks that are going to increase. We have already a very large insurance protection gap today. To also think that there is a need to have more public-private partnerships, and also to think from a European perspective, maybe there is also the need to have a European layer to actually also protect the European citizens against natural catastrophes. So I will go in this presentation a little bit deeper on this point of understanding the protection gap, because at EIOPA we have been doing quite some work in that regard. So we have developed a dashboard, so the link is here on my slide, to actually be able to see what is the insurance protection gap by peril and for different countries, because depending on the peril, if you look at flood or windstorm, the story is very different. Typically, windstorm are much better insured in Europe than floods, but also between different countries. The situation is extremely diverse in Europe. There are some countries where, For example, you have only the private sector providing insurance coverages, and there are some other countries where some public-private partnerships, so where the government, for example, works together with the insurance sector, that is already in place. So it's extremely diverse, and all these different parameters, of course, also explains that the insurance protection gap in Europe is extremely different from country to country, but also from peril to peril. So this is what we tried to show in this dashboard that we also committed to update yearly, so that we can have also an indication and be able to monitor it over the long term. Of course, when you want to develop such dashboard, what we also realized is that there is a need to have appropriate access to data, to be able, for example, to measure, to be able to monitor the risks for natural catastrophes, but also how well are they insured in different countries. So that's why for us, as a European supervisory authority, we are used to collect data from the insurance sector. So here we also have started a new project to also get a better access to data, such as, for example, lost data after an event. So to provide a better picture of actually what was insured. And of course, this helps us to also monitor the insurance protection gap. I mentioned if we want to talk about solutions to address the protection gap in Europe, of course, when we think about the insurance protection gap, we've seen, 25% of the losses were insured in the past. We can think, maybe immediate solution is to say, well, everybody has to have an insurance coverage. But this will not be sustainable on the long term, because we really see the risk that, simply the risk might become unaffordable. So that's why at the EIOPA we really spend a lot of time to work on this concept we call impact underwriting. So it's really this role that the insurers, they can play to actually help to reduce climate change risk. And I think this is really an area we have started to work on, and that we will continue to promote and to really push to see more done in that regard by the insurance sector. So to finalize my presentation for today, so sustainable finance, this is a clear priority for EIOPA. In this presentation, I focus on climate change and insurance protection gap. And to be able to address the protection gap, we work on what we call 4 pillars to understand, to mitigate the risk, to cover, and to transfer the risks. And as next steps for us, because the journey will continue and we want to make further progress in this topic, is first that we have clearly acknowledged the fact that there is a need to raise awareness and also understanding of prevention measures among the society and the industry. So we will continue to work and to publish and some tools and papers in that regard. The second is also, I mentioned before, this importance to have access to data and also to have more public access to this data, because, for example, the insurers, they already collected lost data in the past and they have a good database, but maybe this is not necessarily available to the public. So here we would like to also act. And finally, also because we recognize this need to really do more with regard to adaptation measures and also to incentivize the insurance sector to do more to help their clients, for example, to provide them advice on adaptation measures. So here at the EIOPA, we will also think how to further recognize this importance and also how to reflect that in the capital requirement needed for the insurance sector. So I hope that you found this presentation interesting, and thanks a lot for listening today.